Hi, we're beginning Module 3, which is the circulatory system and heart disease. Today, in this lecture, we'll go over Chapter 5.1, briefly describing the overall function of the circulatory system, and then we'll spend a bit more time on 5.2, going over the different types of the blood vessels and their function. Basically, the point of the circulatory system is to what we refer to as service the cells of the body. By service, we mean getting them what they need to grow, to divide, to function, and taking away their waste. And the way our body does this is by moving these components through blood. There's other functions of blood involved in our immune system, but right now we're going to basically just keep it as give them the cells oxygen, take away waste. So in this picture that I've drawn, your book doesn't have one, I have this thing that looks like a road, really should be a blood vessel. Inside the blood vessel, we have red blood cells. The function of red blood cells is to carry oxygen. Oxygen actually binds to the red blood cell, and that's how it moves through the body. The oxygen then diffuses, moves out. You can see my arrows from O2, the arrows going into the square, which is a body cell. So oxygen diffuses out of the blood and reaches every single cell in our body. The cells in our body are not surrounded by air or blood. They're surrounded by what we refer to as interstitial fluid. So blood vessels have to reach every cell in our body in order for diffusion to function. Glucose, here depicted as a hexagon, also has to be able to diffuse from the blood into the body cell. Our body cells use oxygen and glucose for cellular respiration to make ATP. Wastes that our cells produce are carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide I have depicted here with arrow going back to the blood because our blood carries that waste back to the lungs and we exhale it. And this is the overall function of the circulatory system. Now we'll move on to different types of blood vessels. This is 5.2 in your book. We're going to start with arteries. So arteries are the blood vessels that are attached, start from the heart and deliver the blood away from the heart. So when your heart contracts, all the blood that's being pumped out initially moves through arteries. So arteries are not defined by oxygenated or deoxygenated blood. They're defined by the direction of blood movement. So arteries take blood away from the heart. Because arteries are the first vessel the blood comes into contact with when it is contracted from the heart, the arteries are the ones that have to withstand the highest pressure. Think of the heart as a pump, and when it pumps, it pushes the blood under high pressure out of the heart, and those arteries have to be able to absorb that pressure. And so they have to be able to expand when the heart contracts, kind of like a rubber band, and then recoil when the heart relaxes. So the form of the artery fits this function of being able to withstand high pressure. If we look at this picture, what you should notice is that it has a couple layers. It has 3 layers. And it has a very thick middle layer that's smooth muscle. And it has thick muscle so that it doesn't break or burst from the pressure of the blood. Along with that, it has a protein called elastin. And I have this here. And elastin is kind of, think of the name, elastic. It's kind of like these fibers that are elastic, which allow the artery wall to kind of function like this rubber band and stretch and recoil without ripping or tearing. From here, we move to what's depicted here in the middle, the capillaries. So capillaries are where exchange of nutrients and waste occurs between the blood and the body cells. So the picture I showed you previously where oxygen was diffusing out, glucose was diffusing out to the cell, the waste from the cell, the carbon dioxide was diffusing into the blood. That has to happen from capillaries. And because exchange has to happen, capillaries have to have a very thin wall. Because imagine, how would oxygen diffuse through the wall of an artery? That's too thick. It couldn't. But capillaries, on the other hand, have a very thin single layer of endothelium, which is kind of like epithelium, like your skin, but it's only one cell thick. And so the gases are able to diffuse in and out. So your body has what are called capillary beds that are these networks. Think of a meshwork of capillaries that surround, let's say, your muscles of your leg or your organs, right? And so all the cells come into close contact with a capillary. So capillaries where exchange happens. So think about, if your blood's going from your heart, it'll first come out an artery, and then from the artery, it'll branch into smaller vessels. The ones in between arteries and capillaries are called arterioles, and then from there, they'll go into capillaries. Once the exchange has happened from the capillary beds, the vessels will come together into venules and then reach what are called veins. So veins carry blood back to the heart, whereas arteries carry blood away from the heart. Veins carry blood back to the heart. And to do this, the veins often have to move against gravity, because there's blood that gets to your feet that has to get all the way back to your heart. And so veins have an additional feature that allows them to not let the blood fall back down with gravity. So veins have valves. They are one-way valves, this picture has them here, that prevents backflow of blood. The walls of the veins are thicker than capillaries, but they're not as thick as our arteries because they're very far from the heart. And so the blood there is not under such great pressure. Okay, so based on what we have covered, let's go back to this picture. You should all be able to say, which type of blood vessel do I have depicted here? Is it an artery? Is it a capillary? Or is it a vein? The correct answer is capillary, because exchange is happening, and that's the function of capillaries.